It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the CFPs on the program. With me in the KFG studios, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Are there gaps in your retirement savings? And inevitably, there are going to be times in your life when you are unable to save what you'd hoped, or a retirement plan is unavailable to you through your employer. So what are your options then, and what action should you take? We're going to help you with that today on our episode.
Wow, isn't it awful when you go to get on the radio and there's a frog in your throat? You just got to clear it, but you're like, I'm trying to get this thing out.
I know, this is embarrassing.
Way to go, Kevin.
All right, well,
all right.
It's the least I could do.
Let's do this. Hey, we're going to hit questions later on in the program from fans of the show. We get a lot of them, and as you know, if you've engaged with us before, I'm going to answer you as best I can and then put it in the queue, and we'll hit it on an upcoming program. So if you have questions for us, we'd love to hear from you. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com, and submit questions right there. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Lots of engagement, lots of questions come through the YouTube channel, so go check that out. So yeah, as Kevin was saying, oftentimes if you've got a retirement goal that you're saving up for, you might say, I'm going to save 10%. You might have heard someone say, save 10%, or heard us say, save 15%. And you're like, I'm not there yet, but I can do that, or I can do that, and you're just trucking along, and then all of a sudden something happens in life. There's a pocket, there's a hole, there's a gap, and it's either more difficult to save if you frame it that way, or maybe you aren't able to do that for whatever reason. I'm not just talking about money's tight. I'm talking about these periods in your life when there's sort of this gap in your retirement savings. And so we want to identify those and then talk through how do you fill them in. Okay, so we've got 3 or 4 that we're going to talk through and then sort of help you get through it. So the first one, and not each one is going to apply to everyone, okay? But the first one is, all right, I'm aggressively saving for retirement, and I'm saving 15% towards that goal. And through my 401k, I reach the maximum contribution limit at, say, September. So I'm saving 15% up until September, but then I've got, a couple more months of income where I'm not saving anything. Yeah. That's a gap right there.
Well, and this is one of those gaps or one of those problems, I guess you could say, that a lot of people would wish for, because if your income is high enough that you can save that much money into your retirement plan and run out of room essentially inside of these huge buckets, that, again, good problem to have. It means you're saving a lot of money, but if you're working off of a rule of thumb, or if your retirement plan says that you need to be saving more and you run out of room, or you're no longer allowed to contribute to these retirement plans at work in particular, you got to have a backup plan. And just to kind of level the playing field, remember, almost every year, the amount that you're allowed to contribute changes.
Yeah.
So this is a moving target. It's usually creeping up a little bit over time. And in 2022, the contribution limits to a 401k, it's now $20,500. And that's if you're under age 50. If you're over age 50, it's another $6,500, bringing you to a total of $27,000. So again, big bucket, a lot of money that can be contributed, but it might still not be enough for you, and you may need to get creative with finding other accounts to be able to add to get this money tax sheltered.
I did a video about this, Next Rise Step video on the YouTube channel. It had someone where they were, quote unquote, maxing out their 401k, and they were like, hey, yeah, we're saving aggressively. We got this big goal. We're maxing it out. And they were. This was last year, right at the end of 2021. They were contributing $19,500. This is age 52. There was a separate election you needed to make catch-up contributions. Mm-hmm. Right? So be aware of that. If you didn't see that video or haven't heard us talk about that before, don't just think every 401k plan is going to apply that same contribution limit all the way up. Some of them, and it's old, thankfully, not a lot of them still do this, but there's a separate percentage that you have to elect in order to actually do the catch-up contribution.
Yeah, sometimes employers will cap you. They'll just shut it off once you reach that limit.
Yeah.
Not recognizing that, hey, you're eligible for the catch-up contribution, and it's almost like you have to manually go back in and turn it turn it back on if they mistakenly turned it off for you. So you got to watch your paychecks in the fall. That's for sure.
Well, and it's interesting, Mike, because you're talking about the person, if they're 50, younger than 50, they can max it out at 19.5 or 25 and 2022. And if you are a person that can do that and you can get it done by September, it's quite possible that there is a gap there. And because when we talk about saving for retirement, a lot of times we'll talk about saving 15% for retirement. You save 15% for retirement and you're on ice. Everything works just fine. But what that doesn't address is, well, what about the person who didn't have access to a retirement plan until they were 30?
Yeah.
Or the person that had, life happened and they didn't contribute anything for 3 or 4 years. Or a number of things. So if you're higher income like that, if you've got the cash flow to max out your retirement plan and get it done by the end of September, it's quite likely that you're under. It's quite likely you're underprepared for retirement or under preparing. And I just think in terms of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, one of our rock star CFPs, as Ben likes to refer to them. Last night and I were meeting with a guy, and he'd done a great job of savings, and he was in his early 50s. But when we asked him, hey, do you have a sense whether you're ahead or behind or right on pace? And I was confident he'd say, I'm totally ahead. He said, yeah, I think I'm a little bit behind. And so it's very interesting without running the miles and knowing for sure, because this is what I would want to know. Is there a gap? Is there
just because you max out by September or October, is there a gap? And I think the point, though, so absolutely, you've got to quantify that gap. So if we were to give you some action steps, if this is you, if you find yourself in this spot saying, oh, yeah, wait, I'm saving 15% towards my 401k, but when I actually look at my annual income, I'm actually only saving 11 because some of my dollars at the end of the year won't have any 401k contributions attached to it. Do the math. Sit down with your CFP, do that 5-factor retirement plan, and actually see how much should I or do I need to be saving. If there's a gap and you need to fill it in, and this is you, what are your options, right? What solutions could you have to fill in that gap?
Well, remember those contribution limits that we were referring to, that's per spouse. So if both you and your spouse are working full-time and have a retirement plan at work available, you could max yours out and your spouse could max theirs out as well. And if that's still not enough or you don't have that second option, everyone has the option of contributing to an IRA. Many people have the option of contributing to a Roth IRA. You may even work for an employer who has something real elaborate called a deferred comp plan. Mm-hmm. And this is usually just for higher income employees or upper management, maybe some sales folks. But it's a way for you to set aside some dollars pre-tax. Can't touch it until you reach certain ages, and there's more restrictions on these. But it is a way for you to get more money squirreled away for this big goal of retirement.
You really glazed over what I think is the most impactful one. And we see this all the time where husband and wife, they're saving up for retirement, have an aggressive goal, and they're both saving 15%. Well, one of them has income such that they max their 401k contributions out by October. The other one doesn't have enough income to max it out. So those contribution limits shouldn't be, or those contribution percentages shouldn't be the same. Have one of them be 15, have the other one be 25, so that you're actually getting more set aside for retirement. IRAs, Roth, absolutely. HSA is another option. We're going to fill in more of those gaps, identify more gaps, and fill them in. That more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn, Josh Gregory. What you're watching right now, every episode of the Wise Money Show. Oh, my goodness. What am I saying? Hey, can we turn that camera around?
Oh, shoot.
Thank you.
Which one?
That one.
Why? Who's it on?
It's yeah. I can't tell where I'm at. So anyway,
someday when
I started looking into it, and I'm like, What am I saying?
Josh, someday when we're stars, we'll be dependent.
I need to be able to see myself while I talk.
Oh, my goodness.
My big full lips, I need to make sure they're moving just right.
Well, so YouTube, this is our 1 hour talk show. It airs right here on this channel every Saturday morning. Also on podcast if you're into that as well. So check that out. We also air all throughout the week Next Wise Step videos, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that, taking one financial concept, applying it directly to your financial life. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications if you like the content, Thank you. Yeah.
We also didn't mention HSA.
I know. There's a lot we left on the bone there. So I'll pick that back up, and then because how you fill in the gaps, we're going to be potentially similar for a lot of these, but I think we picked that back up. Mm-hmm. So, all right, ready?
Yeah, I'm. Hey, Lindsay, I'm shooting you something in the old Slack channel. All right. So,
Ready?
yeah, okay. I'm waiting on you, Mike.
Oh, I was just about to go, and you're like, so.
Well, yeah.
Okay. All right, is there a gap in your funding for retirement? Is there a pocket where, hey, I should be funding X amount, but there's just something in life where you're not actually fulfilling that to the full extent? So we're helping identify those gaps right now and then helping you fill them in. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast, wherever you listen. Go check it out. Search the Wise Money Show. Follow us or subscribe to it there. Okay, so we're talking about these gaps that unintentionally show up in your life just at certain periods of time where, all right, I should be saving X amount, X percent towards retirement, and then something happens and you're not able to do that. The first one we're talking about is, I'm saving 15% towards retirement, or 10%, but you reach that 401k contribution limit before the end of the year. And so when you actually look at your total income compared to your total amount that you've saved up for retirement, you're actually short of what your goal was as an overall percentage. So how do you fill that in? I think we mentioned it last time, but if your spouse is working and they're not maximizing theirs, to me, that's the first place I'd consider. IRA Roth is the other one, but HSA, Josh.
Yeah, we often talk about the health savings account as another tool. We usually think of this as maybe a reimbursement account or an account for spending the dollars on your health care throughout your working career, but it doesn't have to be. If you have extra cash flow available, you can instead put money aside into a health savings account and invest it. So taking an investment approach to these dollars could allow you to basically turn it into another retirement tax shelter, because this money can grow for years and years tax-free, not just tax-deferred. So anytime you can use an account that completely avoids taxation, man, that's a magical thing. You got to take advantage of that if it's available to you.
Yeah, you can say this is a component of my retirement plan, and this is the pool of funds that I'm going to use to pay for my health expenses during retirement. So you can grow that just like you're growing your, whether it's a 401k, 403b, whatever your situation may be. But that is a Swiss Army knife, and it's basically a triple threat.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and then, so we're talking about tax shelters that you can fund to get there. And that's got to be a primary, strategy that you evaluate with your CFP. What's your, bracketology, as Kevin called it. And we talked about your tax shelter strategy in previous shows. But exhaust all of your options to save up into tax shelters. But if there's additional savings needed or that you have capacity for, save up into a joint account or a non-tax sheltered account. That can still get you there. Don't think, well, I've maxed out my, some people think this as well. Well, I've contributed as much into my 401k enough to get a match, so then I'm done.
Yeah.
No. Your retirement is going to be, is going to be thirsty for dollars, right? So save up into as many tax shelters as possible, but then keep going if you have the capacity to, or if your goal suggests that you should.
Yeah, and the other person that I would want to talk to right now, we're meeting with a lot of folks who had a great year or quite possibly their best year ever in 2021, whether it was them personally or the organization they work for. So a lot of folks in the RV industry and some of these other industries that have bonuses like they've never had before, and they're saying, hey, listen, I've got this bonus. What should I do? And I may or may not be filling up the buckets that are available to me through work. And so this is where, again, I would make the case you want to have a strategy. You want to have a plan that says, hey, this is how you can do it, because you say, well, hey, what if I can't, what if I'm doing this? And I've seen just recently where the husband was fully funding at work. The wife wasn't, but she didn't, her income was $30,000. And so we encouraged them to say, hey, listen, let's have mother join the no paycheck club.
Right,
Yeah.
contribute to everything.
And have husband shift income from him to her to get hers fully filled up. So now, because it didn't make sense at the time, because they're looking and saying, she doesn't want to save that much money. She doesn't want to, feel like she's going to work and getting nothing. And I'm like, well, if you guys put this thing together, it can be amazing.
I was gonna say, I see that a lot when one spouse has a 401k plan where there's a discrimination testing, a highly competent individual where, listen, I'm trying to save more and I have the capacity to save more, but I can only save 8%, 2% above the average or something like that.
Yep.
And then the way around that is really goose up your spouse's 401k or, fill in the gap somewhere else. Let's go to another area where there could be a retirement contribution gap. And I'm actually going to tie two of them together here in the interest of time, but also because they're pretty similar. We had the Great Resignation, maybe still going through this, and a lot of people switch jobs, or even not connected to this time period. You switch jobs, and you're not eligible for that 401k for 6 months, or a year, or whatever it is. That's a gap.
Yep.
There's a gap right there. Do you get used to the new paycheck, and then all of a sudden it becomes a hardship to start saving again? Or what about you transition to an employer, or you have an employer where they don't offer a retirement plan at all? How do you fill in those gaps?
Well, this is the beginning of the year, and so we like to encourage people to make sure they're setting goals, especially their financial goals. And if you were part of the Great Resignation, you went from one place to another, I would encourage you to make sure you're keeping those dollars with you, whether that's you take your prior plan and put it into your IRA. There's lots of flexibility and probably different and better investment choices in an IRA than might be possible in your new retirement plan at work. But that's when you want to sit down, Mike, and do the budget and say, hey, I got my 3 bank account system. All my bank accounts are fully funded. There's a surplus here. What do I do with it because I'm not able to get into my employer's plan? And I would say either set up a 4th bank account that you just fund automatically, because once you put this stuff on autopilot, it inertia takes over.
Yeah, I try my hardest to automate all of my savings and none of my expenses. Now that I say I try really hard, it was easier a few years ago because now so much is on a subscription basis. So many expenses are on a subscription. The only way you can pay is automatic monthly. But just take that premise. Automate as much of your savings as possible. I would say all of them. And as few of your expenses as possible.
Well, and there's no time more important than when you hit one of these interruptions to your contribution, right?
Yeah.
Because when you get out of that normal rhythm where you already had things automated, you already were contributing to that former retirement plan or employer's retirement plan. And the risk is you have this external force or some sort of circumstance that prevents you from contributing for a little while. This is what throws people off on their financial plan. It's hard to get back on track unless you do what Kevin was saying, where, if there's going to be a 6-month gap, let's say, before you're eligible to begin contributing to that new plan, during that 6 months, what you do with the cash that's eventually earmarked to go back into the plan is critical. And so you have to set this aside. You have to stay in the rhythm, stay in the pattern of contributing, even if it's not going into the 401k. And the beautiful thing is, you and your certified financial planner can crunch the numbers and figure out what portion of those dollars that are stockpiling now in that fourth bank account could maybe go into an HSA contribution or an IRA or a Roth IRA. And the beautiful thing is you can make that decision up until April 15th after the year is already expired. So you have a lot of time to do some even last minute planning on this, but you can only do it if you've got the dollars preserved.
Yeah, if they slip through your fingers, if you haven't preserved them, then you've already made your choice, essentially. So what are some other gaps? And then let's get real specific about which accounts to be funding. So that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Okay. All right, we're getting into a rhythm.
Okay,
a little clunky start there, thanks to me, but getting into a rhythm.
Yeah, and the old throat clear. Dude, I started talking and it just, I was going straight downhill. I'm like, this is not a self-correcting problem.
Jeez. Just embrace it.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Do you know how horrible it is to listen to someone, though?
I know. That's what I'm
I
saying.
know,
Just embrace
I
it.
know
Just,
what's in your throat, and I am totally grossed out.
Yep.
My wife calls me out on that all the time. She's like, just stop talking and clear your throat. I don't want to hear Kermit the Frog here, you know?
That's funny.
Because I think they can hear it better than you can necessarily feel it right away, and it just gets worse and worse. But
And your brain is like, can they hear it? I don't think they can. I'm struggling. They can't tell. No, they totally can.
I'm totally covering it up.
I was listening, I'm like, okay, that's irritating, but how irritating is it exactly?
All right. I think
What do you want to do?
we're going in the third segment.
Yep.
I think I want to get really specific about look at this account first, then this account, then this account, but then bring it or start with you got to quantify how much you should be saving to begin with. What if there's not even a gap there? So self-employed, yes, but then I want to re-hit some of those things that we just sort of popcorn mentioned and emphasize them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude. With this whole self-employed thing, I have 3 clients in the last 3 months that they have LLCs, so they've got their legal structure set up. And if they do nothing, that's their tax structure by default.
Right.
And so they didn't realize you could make an election to have a different tax structure to be more favorable.
Yeah, I'm making a next 5-step video today about that. So
Yeah.
gonna do 4 of them.
I actually love, JJ the CPA is a little bit in your face, but I love his approach on that. He is just,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. We're identifying and helping you fill in the gaps in your retirement plan. Your retirement savings, you're on track, and then a life event happens, there's a pocket where there's no retirement savings. We're identifying those, helping you fill them in. That's what we're doing right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Okay, so we're talking about these gaps that exist as you go through life. You switch employers, or you max out your 401k and still have income throughout the rest of the year. Where do pockets exist where you feel like, I should probably be saving, or I want to be saving to retirement, but you're not? One gap, and there's we could go pretty deep in this one. It could be a whole show, is if you're self-employed. Now, let me throw a couple tangents at you. The whole idea of saving 15% towards retirement is a good habit to start, because it puts some sort of barometer on how much you're going to be spending, how much your lifestyle could be, and helps you save aggressively for compound interest. Well, if you're doing that on your job and then you've got a side hustle, what are you doing with that income? Mm-hmm. Well, that's just, you're going to pay a lot of tax, by the way. We'll talk about that in just a second. But it might just be inflating your lifestyle. Therefore, if it's inflating your lifestyle and you're not paying attention to it, now this 15% savings that you're doing on the other income, your paycheck income, it's not enough because your lifestyle is higher than what it otherwise would be. So that's one thing you've got to consider with self-employed. But the other, small business owners, and if you're self-employed, you believe in yourself. You believe in yourself, you believe in your business, and you always are aware of the multitude of needs for your business. It's hard for business owners to take money out of the business. It typically is, okay? And so typically it's hard then for you to say, I'm going to set up a retirement plan and stuff as much money as I possibly can in it. Normally it's hard even to, so anyway, so those are two sides of the same coin, and that is when you own a business or you're self-employed or have a side hustle, that could create a gap in your saving up for retirement.
Well, and if you are self-employed, like you said, Mike, you believe in yourself, but the other thing is your best investment should be in yourself and in your business.
But the challenge, though, is if that's your only investment.
Right.
Right.
And I agree. But so when you look at there are different seasons. So we're talking about this whole retirement gap. There are seasons. If you're just starting a business, you probably should be investing and reinvesting everything you have.
100%.
Unless there's a surplus. If there's a surplus, then or if you start to get punished by your tax burden, that's when you need to look around and say, what kind of relief can I get? Because there's really two angles to approach this. One is the tax relief that I can get from using a retirement plan, but the other is funding my retirement plan that I can get from funding my retirement plan.
Yeah, I know. It's a double-edged sword benefit or something like that.
It's like the triple-edged sword.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I'm glad, though, that you're kind of preaching moderation here a little bit, Kevin, at least early on, because how many businesses fail because they're undercapitalized? They take too much of the cash out, they're living too large of a lifestyle, and they're not leaving enough cash in it to get through the rough spots, that sort of thing. So you definitely want to make sure that the business is cared for, because it is the cash cow that is, kicking off all the income that you hope to be able to do something wise with. Well, once you know that the business is self-sustaining, that it is well-funded, and you realize that, hey, there is something here for me to pull money out to live off of, but also pull money out of the business to be able to save for the future, for that day when someday you're going to walk away from that business, either sell it, shut it down, maybe some businesses can thrive for a while and then go into a period of decline. You never know what the future is going to hold. And that's part of the reason why you need to have assets built up in retirement accounts or other investments that are not dependent upon you to get out of bed every morning and go hustle to make it succeed.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen that over and over and over again over the last 28 years where the small business owner will say, I don't know where the money's going to come from, but I'm going to set that up, and we're going to figure out a way to get that funded every year. And over time, in addition to the business growing and being healthy, they've got a separate pool of money growing and diversifying them. And I've, especially in 2020, we saw the folks that had that diversification, they had their business and they had a separate retirement plan, that saved a lot of small businesses.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
If there are businesses that fail from being undercapitalized, there are an awful lot of retirements that fail from being undercapitalized as well. And a lot of business owners, they get to the end of retirement and they don't do exactly what you're describing. And they have to sell the business for some top dollar in order to suddenly fund retirement at the last possible second because they haven't been building it along the way. What they don't realize is that there are accounts available to small business owners, self-employed individuals, that you can use to fund retirement out of some of the profits of the business. Things like a SEP IRA or a single K, we often call it, which is a 401k for an individual in their own self-employed business.
That's not a 401k for single individuals. You
That's
can
right.
have it if you're married. Just no problem. Okay, so then let's get really specific. If you're self-employed, Josh just mentioned, I probably wouldn't put it in that order.
Right.
I'd probably say single K first, or solo K. It used to be called a KEO. There's all sorts of
Una 401k.
Yeah, whatever. And so single K. Depends on if you have employees or not. If you have employees, you're probably looking at maybe a simple IRA. If you don't, then maybe a SEP IRA. And if you have employees and the cash is really working, you're probably going to look at a PEP type 401k. All right. Anything else you'd add there for consideration?
No, I agree with you. The simple IRA is great if you have 100 employees or less, and you're not able to fully fund what you want to do. The contribution limits are a little bit smaller with the simple IRA, and it's really easy. It's a great starter.
Yeah.
And I would never look down my nose at someone who has a simple IRA. I was talking with someone in our industry yesterday who said simple IRAs are they're kind of dead now. I'm like, no, they're not, dude. What? No. What
The PEP might take them out.
Yeah, but this guy lived and was working in New York City.
Oh yeah.
So there's a big difference from the kind of the coastal elites to the folks of us in the heartland here who are working hard and we just see different things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or we see things differently, whatever you want to say.
Well, and then again, getting real practical, above and beyond all of this, the advice was given in the first segment, and I mean, it just has to be the entire tone of this discussion, and that is you need to calculate how much you should be saving. I mean, this is one of the primary roles of your certified financial planner, looking at all 6 areas of your financial life and helping target how much should you be saving. And guess what? Yes, you should automate it and pay yourself first, set it and forget it, all that sort of stuff. But then you've got to update that analysis in an ongoing basis to make sure you account for changes in your goals, changes in the world, right? Yeah. And so you've got to calculate that with your CFP. And go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to, piggyback on that and just say you don't want to allow the IRS or your employer or someone outside of your financial life to define for you what the limits are for your contributions. It should be your plan that drives the right contribution, and then find the tools, the places to set that money aside. That's what your certified financial planner is for.
That's why I get these comments from YouTube. YouTube will occasionally be watching the full show and say, this could have been 10 minutes. Well, I know, we're kind of talking through a bunch of details and on the radio, but I mean, Josh, you just nailed it. In 15 seconds. That is it. That plan is your financial plan, not your 401k plan. Your financial plan drives how much and determines how much you should be saving. All right, we've got more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Dude, I'm so glad what I was going to say was not going to be that good. So,
Thanks.
all right. What I was thinking, and I sort of got on a roll right at the beginning with small businesses and everything. I was thinking we could get into contribution limits for Roth or IRA, talk about that a little bit. But let's if you guys say we've got to hit that in the fourth segment, then we can. Otherwise, let's just go to questions.
Yeah, I'd go to questions.
Okay.
Why would you do that?
Why would we go to questions?
What are you guys talking about?
Sheesh.
Let's just. Ooh, we're gonna start with Greg's. Greg, you sly dog. Great question.
Greg. The appreciated
So
assets
good.
margin. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's understandable. Especially, yeah.
I've certainly never had anybody ask that before.
Wait, from Richard?
No,
Or Greg.
Does Greg have CPA behind his name?
I know how I would answer Greg's question. Do you guys know?
I'm not sure that that's correct.
Why would it be correct?
It wouldn't. Do you want to know what my answer is now, or do you want to know on the air? I mean, my answer is, dude, the market value of whatever you put in your donor advised fund
Is the deduction?
is the size of your deduction.
That's what I would say.
Doesn't
as
matter
well.
how long you've owned it.
But I think this would be a good teachable moment to say there is some, dude. This is
That's where I.
this is the whole segment, dude.
could be.
Because I am excited right now.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. Are you looking up to see
Yeah.
if there is? I mean, we can even mention that. There's.
the way the question's framed, it sounds awfully confident.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a statement than a.
No. That's fine. Do you know how many times I've been confidently wrong?
I know.
You turned it
That's
into a
why
question.
I'm nervous because it seems so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. If you haven't been there before, every episode is there, but also Next Wise Step videos and all sorts of content that we post all throughout the work week. So go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there. Stop whispering, guys. I'm trying to do something here.
No, Mike,
okay, we're on the air.
Mike, you're doing great.
Okay.
Hey, we're so proud of you.
Hey.
I was just telling Josh to put that in the Wise Money Slack channel. So listen, go to the YouTube channel. Here's the amazing thing. Last year, Mike's fans, and Josh and I are just kind of hanging around Mike just to get a little whatever the thing you get from being a big star there. But I mean, Mike's fans listened to 5 million minutes of Mike talking about stuff.
We can't talk about that because the 4 million of those were me. I'm just kidding. Go check it out. Lots of content there.
500,000 Leanne and the other 500 Ken.
We get a lot of questions. The reason why we're talking about the YouTube channel is we get a lot of questions, a lot of engagement on the YouTube channel. So much that originally it was I'm going to keep up with all of it, and it's to the point now where I keep up with as much as I can in our team. We got a great question here from Greg about donating appreciated assets to a donor-advised fund. Here's the comment/question. Appreciated assets that are donated to a donor-advised fund have to be owned for a year or more. Basically, they've got to be long-term capital gain type assets. Otherwise, when you make the donation, the deduction that you get is only your cost basis. Is that correct? Not the market value. Now, here's the thing. The Internal Revenue Code, the tax code here in the U.S., is the most complicated tax code on the planet. They've got that. You know, world's best coffee that is typically said by the place that has the worst coffee. No, the U.S. has the most complicated tax code, and they are actively making it more difficult. There are back alleys in this thing. There are exceptions, and then exceptions to exceptions. So, Greg, I don't know, and guys, I don't know if you guys have this answer or not yet. I can tell you right now, one of the things that people get confused about a lot is long-term capital gain property. Long-term, when you make that contribution into your donor advised fund, you get to deduct the market value, right? Whatever. So if you bought something for $1,000 and it's now worth $5,000, you donate that $5,000 into your donor advised fund, you get to deduct $5,000 on your taxes. Now, the question is, what if you invested that $1,000 and then 6 months later it turned into $5,000? Have we found the answer? Is there an exception to an exception to an exception?
I'm seeing some evidence that this may be right. Mm-hmm. We were talking kind of at the break, like, wow, what a puzzling question. None of us have ever been asked that question before. Should you only be contributing long-term capital gain assets to your donor advised fund? And there's some law offices out there, some folks who specialize in this that say, no, if you contribute the short-term capital gain type assets, you're limited to only the cost basis as your write-off.
Is this like sometimes in the financial Twitter sphere or whatever, like people say, okay, the top, like only these sorts of things only happen at tops. Well, when you have so much short-term capital gain, so much short-term appreciation that you're worried about how to donate it and what you get, like that doesn't happen at market bottoms. I'll just say that.
Right. So, Greg, that's a great question, and because this is a jargon-free zone, what Greg is referring to, this donor-advised fund, it means I can put anything into a donor-advised fund. I can put cash. I can put highly appreciated securities. I can put unappreciated securities. Whatever I want to put in there, when I put that in there, Greg's question is, well, what's the benefit to me? Yeah. And so using an example, if I bought a stock for $1,000, its value is $10,000, but I haven't held it for a year. Greg's point is your deduction is limited to your basis, which
is what you invested originally.
Correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is where, when you use a donor advised fund, they've become much more popular, because when you use a donor advised fund, depending on the one that you're using, you can automate your charitable giving. You can automate your charitable giving to your church. You can give monthly to your church. You can give to various organizations, and you can stop writing checks. We helped a client this past year set up a donor advised fund, and he said, you just saved me from writing about 54 different checks.
I hate writing checks.
Yeah.
Can't stand it.
So, and the nice thing is when this goes electronically, it's all done. There's nothing more to do. There's nothing. It's all tallied. It's all electronic. So this is what I would think about, Greg. If I've got a stock that I bought for $1,000 and it's worth $10,000, what else might I want to do with that if I was giving it? If I wanted to give it to charity, and I only got $1,000 benefit instead of a $10,000 benefit, I might not want to give it to charity.
I wouldn't give it to charity.
So, but where does charity start?
At home.
Charity starts at home.
Your favorite radio show.
That's right. So if charity starts at home, I would think, is there any chance that I will be gifting my children any money? Is there going to be a call and they say, hey, Dad, the car died. I need another car, or I need a car repair, or I need some money at college, or fill in the blank. If there's any kind of charity happening within the family, those would be great assets to give to the children, because when you gift that money, so if Mike is my favorite child and Mike says, hey, Dad, I need $10,000, I can gift that $10,000 to Mike. My basis is $1,000, so I'm also gifting my basis to Mike. Yep. But if Mike needs the money, it's quite possible he's in a position where his capital gains tax rate is 0.
Yeah, or just overall tax rate is really low, right? For short-term gain property. And so, yeah, that's a way to optimize, well, how do you pay the tax? Certainly if it's short-term gain property and you really want to donate it, work with your CFP and your CPA, have them do all the research. They're going to, weed through the conflicting sources and then say, all right, here's the right path to take. If it's determined that no, short-term gain property, your donation is the basis, you don't donate that. I think you'd look at other dollars. I mean, if you have a knack for creating a vast amount of short-term capital gain with assets, likely you've got other assets. And you can consider, all right, what makes the most sense to donate at this time?
That's right. And here's a principle that is always true. You want to be donating things that have the most gain built into them. Not, irrespective of, is it short term, is it long term, what has run up in value, which represents a lot of taxable income to you if you're the one that sells it ultimately. But if it gets transferred to a charity or to someone in a lower tax bracket, either one it's the same concept. You're minimizing the tax. Obviously, the charitable contribution has different motivations attached to it, and ultimately, it completely avoids the tax.
Yeah.
So when you're selecting what to transfer into your donor advised fund, or the alternative is to just give some stock directly to that charity, that's still a viable option too. You don't have to run it. It doesn't have to be a two-step process where it goes to a donor advised fund, gets sold, and then cash sent to the charity. You can, many charities, most organizations like this, they are set up to receive stock directly, and then they sell it when the timing is right for them. So look for those things that you are neutralizing the most tax or the most taxable income, and focus on that principle.
Granted, you can gift that stock directly to that charity, but I can tell you on behalf of the administrative team of that charity or of the financial institution you're working with, like, they would love you if you used a donor advised fund instead of
cash is much easier
cutting off a slice. And you say,
That's
why
right.
are we talking about this in January? Because usually we're talking about gifting towards the end of the year. And I'll tell you why. Because if you start thinking about it in January and you get the wheels in motion,
right,
you're not going to be in December like we just went through, where you're doing the scramble.
How often do we start talking about this with clients in the fourth quarter and have them say, oh, well, I've sort of been donating cash all throughout the year, and so I don't know if I want to triple, quadruple my contributions, right?
So
think about it now.
So here's the pro tip. If you say, hey, this year I'm going to give $50,000 to charity, and I know that. If you have highly appreciated stock or a highly appreciated mutual fund in your portfolio, set up the donor advised fund, gift that. And if you still want that stock, if it's a stock that you're in love with, then you can always buy that back. And all you've done is improved your cost basis, and you've created a different lot that you can sell at some point in time to help you with your taxes.
Yep. All right, next question here is from Alex. If you have a Roth 401k, should you open up a Roth IRA? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Yes, you should. We've had probably one of our most popular episodes, because it just gets a lot of I don't know, it's contentious in a way. Is the 5-year rule? The 5-year rule for the Roth IRA is that in order for your gains to come out tax-free, you've got to make a qualified withdrawal. A qualified withdrawal is, after age 59 and a half, and you've had a Roth IRA open for 5 years. Not that Roth IRA, but any Roth IRA open for 5 years. Well, is a 401k a Roth IRA? No, it is not. No, it's not. And
similar animal, but technically different enough that it does not qualify you for a lot of the good tax savings available.
So the big idea, if you've been saving into a Roth 401k, Roth 401k, Roth 401k, and then you retire, and what are you going to do? You're going to roll that Roth 401k over to a Roth IRA and then start drawing money out. I think it's a glitch in the tax code, but the way we see it and the way other experts see it is, well, you haven't had that Roth IRA open for 5 years, therefore, that growth could be taxed, and so yes, I would have you open a Roth IRA if only just to get that 5-year clock started, so you don't have to worry about this if they don't fix this and clarify this gap.
Well, and the Roth IRA again represents one of those additional tax savings or tax sheltered buckets that you can contribute to if you've already maxed out the 401k at work. So this expands your ability to save for retirement. And the cool thing about a Roth IRA that we don't talk about a whole lot is that when you put money in, you can technically pull your contributions back out without being taxed or penalized on that. So it's not quite the same as setting it aside and saying, I cannot touch this until age 59 and a half.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, well, the only reason you would have a Roth IRA if you are funding a Roth 401k is for that 5-year clock. No, that's definitely not the only reason. What if you don't like your investment choices within your Roth 401k? What if you've maxed out your Roth 401k? And anyway, there's lots of other reasons why you may also want. What if you're contributing to your Roth 401k and then you get a bonus? There's lots of other reasons why you'd say, yeah, Roth contributing still makes sense in your situation, and let's also fund the Roth IRA. So thanks for the question. All right, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.